Hello everyone. Today's poem is 冰封七月 Part 2. In the Part 1 video, we have a briefing of this poem as well as the Beam Wind as a whole. And we have gone through the first 3 paragraphs. So at the first glance, this first 3 paragraphs is without any logic when we considering the time sequence. So normally when we review, when we writing something around a whole year, normally we start from a specific year, month, and then by the time sequence, by the month sequence, we write about each month one by one. And but actually the first 3 paragraphs and the whole poems is with the sequence of the months. But the first sentence, pair of sentence, 七月流火, 九月授衣, the most famous sentence is out of that sequence. So this is just like some of the starters. The poet chose the most significant date and things in the whole year, and he started the whole poem with that snapshot. So why the 7th month is the most critical month for a year? Because that's the turnover of the yin and yang. If you know something about yin and yang, you will know since the 7th month, the summer ended, which means before this day, the yang, the power of yang, the positive, power of the positive is growing, is always growing. And at this point, the yin grows. So that's the fundamental power and factors in a year, and which is by the heaven. So this change of power is by heaven. It's the power of nature, the yin and the yang. And the power is the basic, the very fundamental of the life on earth, of course, for people as well, for the Zhou people as well. So that's why at the very beginning, the poet point out, he write about 七月流火. So the positive power was decaying, and the power of negative grows. And then followed in the 9th month, the official ordered to make clothes. Why this is so important? It tells us the clothing is so critical for the Zhou people. Practically, it's protect the people to go through the winter safely. And the secondly, the clothing is the things to differentiate the level of the people. So the king has his own style and color of clothing. Likewise, the state lord, the noble people, the average people, they all has their own style of clothing and color. And also the clothing should adapt to the changing of the seasons. So that's also another very fundamental critical philosophy of the Zhou people. As a human being or as a creature in the nature, we always follow the order and the steps of the heaven, of the timing. So in some way, the timing is almost equal to the heaven. So when we consider the first pair of sentences, 七月流火九月授衣, as a starter, not closely related with the context, the first three paragraphs is in a perfect time sequence. We can check this table I made. So it started with the 一之日二之日, the day of the first, the day of the second. So it refers to the 11th month, 12th month in a year. And in the same way, 三之日四之日, the day of the third, the day of the fourth, referring to the first month next year, the second month next year. And in the second paragraph, the term 春日 refers to the days in the spring. So in the lunar calendar, the first 3 months is the spring season. So 春日 referring all the 3 months from the first to the third month. And in the third paragraph, 蚕月, the month of the silkworm, it's referring to the third month of the lunar calendar. So in this way, we can see from the first paragraph to the third paragraph, we have the 11th month, we have the 12th month, we have the first month, second month, and third month totally. And the focal point is the closing, right? So in the first paragraph, it mentioned a little bit that in the first month, we should start our work on the farming field. And just a little bit mentioning of it. But in the second and the third paragraph, it's all about the closing. And very interestingly, the closing things is all the work by women. So in some sense, women has a very, very nice social level, or maybe even equals to the men. Because in this very critical poems for the Zhou people, maybe the most important and poem for the Zhou people, the closing was mentioned as the most priority among all tasks, and the works by the women was mentioned in the first 4 paragraphs, I should say. So later we'll have the fourth paragraph very soon. It's also about closing, and it's also the works by the women. Let's see the fourth paragraph now. 四月萱腰，五月鸣条. The plant, the stem of the plant grows strong, and in the 5th month, the cicada is chanting. So now we come to the 4th month. So it's in a time sequence, right? And then the poets like to match the time, has some of the sad sound from the mainstream time sequence. So we through this poem, the mainstream time sequence is from the 11th month to the 10th month next year. But in each month, when he writes about each month, he match some things happened, occurred, or experienced in other months. So it makes the feelings so abundant and prosperous. Okay, let's continue the 4th paragraph. 八月萑苧，九月蘊觱. So in the 8th month, it's the harvest time. So basically, 萑苧means 2 things. It's the harvest time, and it also refers the plant was fully matured. And in the 10th month, the leaves fallen down. So that's the winter's time. And the first two pair of sentences in the fourth paragraph, 四月 until the fourth month till the 10th month, basically describe the life cycle of a plant from the springtime to the early winter's time. So that's the life cycle of a plant, of the grass, of the crops, of course, the most important of the crops. Okay, let's continue. So the time goes back to the 11th month again. 一之日于觜，取彼狐狸，为公子求. So in the 11th month, we are doing some of the hunting of the foxes and the wolves. 觜 is a sort of the very similar small animal like the fox, smaller than the fox. And 取彼狐狸, so we hunt down the foxes, and the women made the clothes, the winter clothes, with the fur of the foxes. Okay, so it's still the work for the women, right? From the first to the fourth paragraph, all the works described is about women. Okay, let's continue. 二之日觱童，宰战武功. In the 12th month, check the table. You can check the table. The day of the second refers to the 12th month of the lunar calendar. People gathered together. 觱童 means people gathered together. The men, of course, and they are doing the military drills. 宰战武功, so that means they are doing the drills of the military drills, or they have a war with some other state, with some other people. So 武功 basically refers to the things related with the military. It could be the military drill, or it could be a war. So from here we know that in that time the war could or should only happen in the winter's time. And because the winter's time, all the field work has been finished, people has spare times. If they have the needs to have a war with others, they go to the war. If it's a peaceful time, they still use this time to do the military drills. Basically, the military drills is go to the wild, hunting the wild animals. Okay, let's continue. So that's, in this poem, it's not about a war, because we see they hunt down the foxes and the wild boar in the last pair of sentences. 严思其踪，现监于公. So they take the small boar captured to their own home, and they gave the big wild boar to the state lord. 现监于司. 宗 refers to the small junior boar, and 监 refers to the big matured boar. Now the fifth paragraph. 5月思中动鼓，6月杀鸡震羽. In the 5th month, the Arcadian moved its leg. 思中 normally was so called as 中司, so it's a very, very frequent insect appeared in the classical poetry. And in the 6th month, the bush cricket, shake its wings to make the sound. So that has its own sound as well. So these two insects, when you hear the sound of these two insects, you know the time. So it's all about timing. In the Chinese, we call it 物候. So when you see some insects or animals or something doing some special things, you know it's the time for in a year. Okay, let's continue. 七月在雨，八月在雨，九月在户，十月蟋蟀入我床下。In the 7th month, that insect was in the wild. In the 8th month, that insect was under the roof somewhere. So be careful. This roof is some places like the temple, but there is no walls. So it's just a roof, still an open place. And in the 9th month, it was indoor. 九月在户, it was indoor, somewhere in the garden or somewhere near the door. And in the 10th month, it's winter's time, right? The cricket, so here we know it's all talking about the cricket from the 7th month to the 10th month. The cricket went under my bed. So which means the cricket goes to some of the very warm places indoor to go through the long cold winter. So that's also a strong implication for the human as well. You should come back to home and stay down and find some warm place to go through the long cold winter safely. Okay, let's continue. 穷至熏暑，塞向井户. So in our house, we use smoke to drive out the rats, and we try to fix the holes on our door and our wall. So just imagine something 3,000 years ago. So the house is still quite primitive. So after a year of hard work, they get back to their house, and their house is full of all kinds of small animals like rats, the wild plants. So they need to clean up their house and fix their house to avoid the cold wind to blowing. Okay, let's continue. 皆我父子，月为改岁，入此是处. So I signed with my wife and my sons. What a year. It's almost, we are getting to another year. 月为改岁 is the time to change the year. So here we know exactly the year of the Zhou dynasty. It's changed in the 10th month. So that's why they call the 11th month as the 一之日, the day of the first. So after the 10th month, they are entered to a new year. And that's also why they call the 11th month as the day of the first. So that's the New Year's Day. This sentence gives us a very, very clear indication and proof. The first month, not the first month, the year started since the 11th month of the lunar calendar. 皆我父子，月为改岁，入此是处. So 入此是处 should explain word by word. It means we come back to here. This house, 是 is house, 处 means to stay down. So finally we come back to this house and stay down. And that's the 10th month. At the end of the 10th month, they are about to enter to a new year. Now the 6th paragraph. 6月食覑及袄，7月享葵及蔬，8月播枣。So in the 6th month, we have the veggie of yu and ao. So I don't know what it is. So the veggie in the wild. And in the 7th month, we offered the veggie of kui and shu. So offer the veggie means they offer this to their ancestors. At the same time, they enjoy the offering after the ceremony as well. So that's the food for them as well. And 8月播枣. So in the 8th month, we have the date. And so the date is a very, very important food for Asian Chinese as well. 10月或到，为子春酒，以解寿眉. So in the 10th month, finally, we harvested the rice field, and we used the rice to make the wine of spring, 春酒, the wine of springs. Of course, the first month is the New Year, right? So that's the big celebration. That's the most important and grand celebration in the whole year. And wine is a critical component, a critical beverage in that grand ceremony. So we know the rice is the material to make the wine for the Chinese New Year. 以戒眉寿. So the wine is for the long life, to bless the long life of everyone. Okay, let's continue. 7月食瓜，8月断胡，9月蔬居. In the 7th month, we have the veggie of gua, some kind of mallow. And in the 8th month, we cut this mallow to use it as a kettle. So the mallow, when it's fully matured, is just like a kettle. So that's also a very, very critical plant in the ancient China. We can see that from here. 9月蔬居. So in the 9th month, the shu, the soybean, was harvested and it was offered. 居, I think it means offering. It's not a plant. We have never seen other places to indicate this character as a plant. 采蘩新春，使我农夫. So we collected the tu as our veggie, and we cut down the tree of chun, and we provide good food for our farmers. So in the later paragraphs, we know the 9th month is a very, very labor intensive, it's a very, very busy month. And still it's a little bit hot. So the Asian Chinese would like to collect the tu as the veggie. It's a veggie, wild veggie of bitterness, and it was told it's good for hot weather. And also they need to prepare for the long winter. So they cut down the tree of chun as the burning woods. Why he point out the tree of chun? Because this tree is quite popular. It's fast growing. It's still quite popular in the northern China. You can see it everywhere in the countryside. And this tree, another very important character is of no use for Asian Chinese people. It cannot be eaten. it smells so bad, and the wood cannot be used for making the furnitures to build the houses. So it's a useless wood. So the only use for that is to as the burning woods to cook the meal, to warm up the people in the winter. And also he point out it's a very, very key thing to provide good food to the farmers, because this month is really, really busy and heavy duty. Now the 7th paragraph. 九月筑长圃，十月萑禾家. In the 9th month, we build a flat ground to process the harvested crops. And in the 10th month, we transported the processed crops, the grains, to the warehouse. So the warehouse belongs to the state lord. So it's the commonwealth for the all states. So be careful for that. And let's continue. 黍稷重禄禾麻菽麦. So it's telling us all the kinds of crops they processed and they harvested, and finally they take them into their warehouse. 黍稷, that's the most important crops in the Zhou dynasty. And He, the rice, Ma, the hemp, Shu, the soybean, Mai, the wheat. So normally they are called as wugu. So in China, wugu normally refers to the food from the field. And that's the most important food for Chinese, wugu. So that's the very, very important things for Chinese. Okay, let's continue. 接我农夫，我嫁季童，上入职公公. I sent to our farmers, to my people. So basically, the normal average people is all the farmers. So 接我农夫 basically it means I sent to my public people, to my average people. Your people has finished all the things of the crops in the field, in the flat ground, and finally you put all the grains into our big warehouse. And now you had continued your work. You goes up to the palaces to do the construction work in the palaces. So from here, it's also a very, very key indication that the construction work by the code of conduct should only done in the October's time. So it's all kinds of work should do in the right time, in the right place. And you can also see how busy in the 9th month, in the 10th month, in my table listed here. So workload, so many workload, and so many items to work. Okay, let's continue how busy they were. 昼尔于毛，宵而所逃. So in the daytime, we go to the field to collect the grasses. Mao is a special grasses used for the construction work. And in the night time, we continue our work making the ropes. 宵而所逃. 所逃 means they are making the ropes. So the ropes is a key material for the construction work as well. So basically, these two things refer all the people. They are so busy with the construction work. 及其盛屋，使其始播白骨. So when the house erected and the workers, they goes up to finish the building at the rooftops. It's also the time to start the work to plant all the crops in the field. So you can see what a busy situation it was. So they need to divide the workload among different group of people. This group of people, you need to finish the construction work on the rooftop, and those group of people, you should go to the farming field and plant the crops for the next year. Eighth paragraph. 二之日觱冰冲冲，三之日觱于林阴。 In the days of the second, what time? Remember? In the December, so not, I should say in the 12th month, a group of people was assigned to go to the river to dig the ice from the river, from the lake. So chung chung is describing the sound, or could be the situation when they are digging the ice from the pond, from the river, from the lake. And in the day of the third, what date? The first month of the year, right? All those ice was collected and transported and stored in the basement. So it's not a typical basement. It could be somewhere in the open place. They dig a very deep hole under the ground, and all the ices from the river, from the lake, will be stored in the basement. And thus, in the summertime, they will have the ice for food, for sweets, whatsoever. And maybe you cannot just imagine, the most important usage for the ice is not always for the cold ice creams. It's for the funeral. So in the Asian China, the funeral is always the big things, the most important things. If a state lord passed away in the hot weather, the ice was used to cool down the carcass and let the carcass not rotten away, because the funeral will take many days, maybe months in that time for a state lord. So they need to keep the carcass at least with no smell, right? So in that time, the ice was the big, thick ice was put under the coffin. And months later, after a long process of the funerals, finally the coffin was sent to the cemetery and buried. So only until this time, the ice is not needed. So if the ice was used as the food, in the ice creams whatsoever, normally it was only used by the state lord. And the state lord liked to use the ice as a gift to his favorite people, to his favorite officers. So that's something 100% luxury. And this tradition kept until the end of the Qing dynasty. So from this poem, we know this tradition for the emperor, for the state lord, lasts at least for 3,000 years. Okay, let's continue. 四之日 祈早 or 祈烧 献糕祭酒. In the early days of the date of falls, 祈烧 means the early time, the early days. We offered the sacrifice of lamb and 酒. 酒 is the kind of veggie. So basically it means the most grand offering, sacrifice to the ancestors with all kinds of meat, with all kinds of veggies, and with all kinds of crops. So this is the offering, the sacrifice to the earth, which is correspond to the first paragraph about the day of the falls. So in the first paragraph, the day of the falls is the state lord, the king. He goes to the field and he pray to the god of earth, and they are blessing for a good harvest. Okay, let's continue. 九月素霜，十月敌场. In the ninth month, the frozen came, and everything looks decaying. 素 means decaying, something dying. And in the 10th month, we clean up the flat ground. So remember what the flat ground for? It's for to process, a place to process the harvested crops. So when they done everything, the Zhou people is very, very considerable, or they are very, very self-disciplined. They, with all so many workload in this period of time, in the 9th and 10th months, they even don't forget to clean up after the work. So that's the Zhou people, and that's also a key characteristic of the Chinese we inherited. Okay, let's continue. The nice, wonderful year end. Let's see how it was. 朋酒思想，月杀羔羊. So we enjoyed the food with all our friends, with wines, and this is such a huge, grand dinner, and we slaughtered so many lambs. 月杀羔羊, we slaughtered so many lambs. 祭彼公堂, so we are full line up in the ancestors' temple. So 公堂 is the ancestors' temple. It's the same thing, but maybe this poem was written in a very, very early stage, so it was still so called as 公堂. So we raise the wine cup. So the 司公 is the wine cup made of the bronze in the shape of rhino. So this type of wine cup was only used by the state lord and the high-ranking officers. So here we can see that this situation basically is describing the most elite people in this state. They are celebrating with their public peoples. And the description of here is about the state lord, the most senior peoples. They are high up there in the ancestors' temple and surrounded by all the people in the country, in the state, in the yard, in the background. And they all enjoyed a big dinner with wines, with the best food, and they celebrate for the new year, and they also enjoy the harvest of the past year, and they make promise to the coming years, and maybe they have some of the review or congratulations to their past year, to their achievement in the past year. And the last sentence basically is to the state lord or to the king, 万寿无疆. So it's a very normal, frequent, popular words used today to celebrate, to make congratulation to a senior people. I wish you a long life. 万寿, they have 10,000 life, and there's without boundaries. 无疆, 疆 is boundary, without boundaries. So that basically means long life. And this is only goes to the state lord, to the kings, and later on to the emperors. And today in normal life, nobody is affordable, or nobody can afford this congratulation, 万寿无疆. But so that's the sentence where it come from very originally. When I reviewed the table I made per this poem, there are so many items described in this poem. The timing, the indication of the timing by insects, by bird, by movement of the constellation stars. And also it describes so many things, the works they do through a year. And also they has described so many food and the special food in different time being around a year. So this is the three key elements for the Zhou people, or it's the philosophy of the Zhou people, that the heaven in somehow is the timing, and it's the very original power or source for the life, for the creatures on the earth. So we should follow the timing, which means we follow the heaven to lead our life, to do our job. And of course, everything is not achieved just by heaven. We need hard work. So there's so many things we need to do in different months according the indication from the heaven. And finally, it describes so many foods, different kind of foods in different seasons, in different months, which is also essential, or it's a sort of the alternative name for the earth, because the philosophy is the heaven and the earth build the creatures, and which feed the creatures. And later on in the Chinese literature, the Mother Earth was replaced by the food, because everybody lives on what he eats, and the food basically is the best part that our Mother Earth gave us, right? So in this poem, the most three key elements, the timing, the seasons, and then we need to be very diligent. We should do our duty and do it according to the timing. And finally, let's enjoy the food the Mother Earth gave us. That's the how we live on. What a nice time, what a nice place it looks like, right? Just like the Arcadian Idyll. Okay, that's for the day. Bye-bye.